Hey everyone, Simon here. I've received a lot of questions about how to find your personal deity. And the reason I've received these questions is partly because um, we did a podcast with Kapil Raj about modern day remedies. And I mentioned on that podcast that the best remedy is to have a personal relationship with a part of the divine that makes sense to you. And when I said that, I compared it to having a comprehensive insurance policy on your car. So people are going on YouTube and looking for solutions to, I've got this problem, I've got this planet, this little thing. And it's like going on YouTube to find, how to fix my car door, or how to replace the tires or the brakes on my car, or this or that, or how to fix this bump, and you're having to do everything yourself. And my point there was, if you have a comprehensive insurance policy, you don't need to do that. You send the car back to the retailer, and your comprehensive insurance policy takes care of it. Rather than you doing every little bit, buffing out every scratch and fixing the brakes and this and that. It's good to know to be able to do those things. But in terms of micromanagement, isn't it better to sort of have a way to ensure that you are aligned with divine dharma, and which is like an umbrella that sort of protects you in general. It's not going to keep you from slipping and, scruffing your knee or twisting an ankle, but it will keep you from the bigger issues and problems in life. So having said that, how do we find what is our Ishta Devata in the chart? I'm going to show you 3 ways to do that. And these are fairly well known, but perhaps not that well practiced. At least I think they're fairly well known. I don't know, maybe they're not. So the first is a look at the 5th house of the horoscope. And to look at the 5th house, what I mean by that is look at the planets in the 5th. So this is the 5th in the North Indian chart. And let's get rid of some of these things here. And you can find the 5th, what's the lagna here? The lagna is Sag, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here's the 5th in the South Indian chart. And the rule is, first of all, see if there are any planets in that house. So in this example, there aren't. If there are, find the strongest among those planets. Okay, how do we find the strongest? Is a planet exalted in its own sign? Retrograde, a retrograde planet also gives strength. Is it in parivartana? That is a huge source of strength. Parivartana means in a mutual exchange with another planet. All of those confer strength. If it's the moon, is it a foolish moon? Okay. And things that confer weakness are debilitation, presence in an enemy sign, a planetary war where 2 planets are on the exact same degree. If the moon is in play, if the moon is very weak and dark. And by the way, if you don't know how to find these things, if you don't know how to see if the moon is dark or bright, or what's a planetary war, or how many degrees does it take for a planet to become combust, which is another huge source of weakness, consider watching my free videos, Introduction to Vedic Astrology, where I cover all of that. For our purposes, combustion for sure happens within 6 degrees. The Shastras give different degrees from different planets, but if it's 6 or less, it's definitely combust. So to summarize, whatever planets are in the 5th house, and by the way, we're not going to consider Uranus. I have these displayed, the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto displayed, even the Upagrahas, Upaketu, Gulika. We're not going to consider them because there are, no known pujas that you could do for Uranus, although, You can actually. You can transpose Neptune and Uranus to some Vedic deities. Neptune would be Varuna. Uranus could easily be Indra. He rules electricity, right? Neptune rules the oceans. So there are correlations, definitely. But and in fact, if you want to use that, if you want to experiment, absolutely go for it. So Uranus being the only graha, the only planet here, you can extrapolate. But just going on the strict Vedic method, then we would say, okay, there's no planet here. So what do we do? Well, you take the ruler of that house. So the ruler of this, Aries, is Mars. And you look at Mars or any planets influencing Mars. So here we have Mars sitting in the third house, and it is aspected by Saturn and the moon. So among those, which is the strongest planet? And that's up to you to decide. So we have Mars, Saturn, and the moon as potential indicators. But the ruler of the house will always be if there's no planet in the house, usually you defer to the ruler, unless that ruler is very strongly overwhelmed by another planet. And here we see Saturn and the moon, and neither of them are, super strong to indicate Mars being overwhelmed. So we could probably safely stick with Mars and maybe secondarily go with Saturn. Okay? So once you've identified the planet, whether it's a planet in the fifth house or ruling the fifth, or if that's weak, a planet influencing the ruler of the fifth, once you've done that, then based on that planet, you can extrapolate an Ishta Devata. And by the way, this is a very personal thing. And let me also say that this is based on the Vedic tradition. Now, what if a person is Christian or, a different religion that doesn't use these names and these deities? Well, you can still use this technique. And I'll show you how. So, for example, for Mars, we have generally speaking, a number of quote-unquote deities to choose from. But what if the person is Christian? Then here you want to take the qualities of Mars, which are heroism, self-sacrifice, generosity. So is there a saint in the Christian tradition who embodies these qualities? Is there an aspect of Jesus with that when he walks into the temple and turns over the tables and shows his courage and his righteous anger? That's the form of the divine that you connect to, that this, person connects to with this horoscope. So this isn't just in the Hindu tradition. You can extrapolate this to really any spiritual tradition. So here, the general deity associated with Mars is Hanumanji or Ganesha, but this would be a form of Ganesha that is Shakti Ganesha, the red form of Ganesha that gives the Shaktipat and the power to burst through obstacles. Okay, so this is the general deity. Now you can take this to a deeper level, and I will when I show you the other two techniques. Okay, so the first technique, very simple. Look at the fifth house. Look at any planets in the fifth. Out of those, judge which is the strongest. Now, what if there's one planet in the fifth? Let's say Saturn were here in the fifth. Okay, let's say Saturn were here. Well, now you have a choice between the planet in the fifth and the ruler of the fifth. And here you're going to have to evaluate which one is stronger. So you always consider the ruler of the fifth, even if there are planets in it. However, and if say, like in this instance, the planet in the fifth is debilitated, then you would probably opt for the ruler, okay, Mars. But let's say this isn't Saturn, but this is the sun, okay? Let's say this is the sun. Now, instead of taking the ruler of the fifth, you would probably take the planet in the fifth, sorry for my doodling here, because the sun is exalted. It is the powerful indicator of the Ishta Devata. And so you would look at the sun, Rama or Surya. Surya is as the Ishta Devata or Rama. Okay. All right. So that's technique number one. Now let's look at technique number two. For this technique, you want to find the Atmakaraka. Okay. The Atmakaraka is the planet that has the highest degree. But we're also considering Rahu Ketu here. So for Rahu Ketu, the lower the degree, the higher it is, because Rahu moves backwards. So let's see which planet has the highest degree. Mars is 15, Saturn is 13, Mercury 6, Sun, Jupiter. Oh, looks like the moon has the highest degree, right? At 21 degrees. The highest degree in any sign. It doesn't matter where it sits. The highest degree within its sign. So you see the moon at 21 is higher than all of the other grahas. But remember the rule for Rahu Ketu is it's backwards. So in fact, Rahu and Ketu have traveled the most distance through their sign. In fact, they've traveled about 25 degrees through Cancer. Rahu has. Okay? So, and by the way, we don't consider Ketu. So for this rule, you can, because they're both at the same degree. So you consider Rahu. So Rahu has traveled backwards 25 degrees, whereas the moon has only traveled 21 degrees. You see that? So here, we're going to take, for this technique, we're going to take Rahu as the AK, the Atmakaraka. Now, some don't use Rahu for Atmakaraka for other things, but for this technique, you can use it. Or if you don't want to use it, then you would default to the moon, and that's perfectly fine, okay? So for technique number two, and I'm going to move my little image here, we're going to take that planet, the Atmakaraka, and transpose it in the D9. Look at it in the D9, okay, the Navamsha. Let's make this Navamsha more clear. There we go. Then we're going to travel 12 houses away from that planet. So here's Rahu in the Navamsha. Here's Rahu in the Navamsha. We're going to go 12 houses away and find what is in that house. So the same technique that we just did with the fifth, we do that with the 12th house from the Atmakaraka in the D9. If that's a mouthful to you, here, I'll say it again. The same thing we did with the fifth house, we do with the Atmakaraka in the D9, the 12th house from that. So the 12th house from the Atmakaraka in the D9. Okay, in the third technique, we're going to do that in the D20. But let's just get this one down. So Rahu, there's Rahu in the D9. The 12th house from Rahu is Cancer. Now here, there's no planet. So the same thing. If there is no planet, then you take the ruler of that house. Okay? So the ruler here is the moon. So that is the second technique, the Atmakaraka technique. And now this is giving us a different look, right? Okay, first we got Mars, but now we got moon. We're going to consolidate this in a second, because note that even with the first technique, we got Mars, but remember what the planets influencing Mars were? They were Saturn and Moon. So now if we were listing them, which we're going to do, we get Mars gets 1, Saturn 1, Moon 1 from the first technique, and now from the second technique, we have Moon again. Okay, so we're going to build a case here. And that's the only thing we get from the second technique. From the second technique, you want to limit it to planets in that house or ruling the house. That's it. Okay? All right, now let's go to our third technique. And the third technique is simply doing the same thing in the Vimshamsha. Okay? The D20. So let's take a look at the D20 here. And do the same thing. So find Rahu. Let me erase some of this stuff here. All right, so we find Rahu. Here is Rahu. go to the 12th house from it. So there it is in this chart, and here's Rahu, and there's the 12th house. And then see what planets are in that house. So again, no planets, then we look at the ruler. What's the ruler? Mercury. All right, so the third technique gives us Mercury. So what I would suggest to you then is to take a look at, okay, so here are the candidates. We have the Mars is a strong candidate, Moon is a strong candidate, as well as Saturn and Mercury. All right, now how do we make sense of all of these influences? Well, one suggestion is to pick one technique and stick to it. What I found is that usually combining two, like the D9 and the D1, works very well to help you figure it out. And in this case, we got a double moon. Or combine the D20 and the D1, combining two of the charts. But let's use all three of them here and try to see if we can come to a conclusion of what the Ishta Devata, or at least a suggestion. Because honestly, it's not for us as Jyotishis to say, this absolutely is it, and you're done. Because over the course of your life, you may go through different steps, and you may worship or have a connection with one form of the divine, and then, you know, when you're a teenager, and then when you're 30, it changes to something else. You know, when you need to make money, you do some, you know, do some other things. You connect with an aspect of the divine that is prosperity friendly, and so on. And then when you're older, you connect to an aspect of the divine that is moksha friendly, that is enlightenment friendly, right? You're not interested in money anymore. So we all go through a natural evolution over the course of our lives. And so you can have multiple, in a sense, Ishta Devatas. All right, so now let's take a look at and see if we can harmonize these techniques. So we got Mars, we got Mercury, and we got Saturn, and we got Moon. Well, the easy thing, one of the easy things to do is to see what do they have in common. Okay, so in one thing that I notice immediately here is that both Mercury and Mars indicate Ganesha. Okay, so that's a possible connection. And in fact, you can even make a case for Ganesha with the moon, although a stronger case would be with Mars or Ketu or Mercury. So that's one thing. So immediately you can suggest perhaps a connection with Ganesh. What is another possible connection? Well, the moon came up twice, and the moon does indicate the feminine divine. And so like Durga, who is also highly heroic. So a very strong, powerful aspect of the feminine divine, right? So we have a heroic deity. We have the moon ruling Durga. And so that's another possibility. So now we didn't look at if a planet is exalted in its own or friendly sign, because there was no planet in the 12th house from the chart. So let me go back here. Sorry about that. So let's say in this technique, in the D9 or the D20 technique, there is a planet. Let's say it's Saturn. Okay? Let's say Saturn is here, not here. If we're going to draw it here, let's say Saturn is here. All right, so now Saturn indicates the Ishta Devata, but which form of the Ishta? We're going to look at the sign that Saturn sits in. Is it a friendly sign? Is Saturn in its own sign? Is it exalted? Is it debilitated? Enemy sign. So Saturn in Gemini is what? You got to know this. Okay, it's in a friendly sign. So by the way, the friendships and enmities here, you take the blue group, Saturn, Mercury, Venus, and the red group, Mars, Sun, Jupiter, Moon. Okay, of course, Jupiter is the enemy of no planet, so you can go either way there. So Saturn is basically in a friendly sign here. Venus would be in a friendly sign. Likewise. So let's go to the chart, and then we would, so then you would go to the friendly column, and you have a choice here of, certain influences. So let's actually go through these and take a look here, what the possibilities are. If you get the sun as the strongest indicator of Ishta Devata, the primary deity is Rama. Rama is the pure, upright, righteous form of the divine incarnate on earth. So if this were Christianity, this is Jesus shining bright as the Son of God. If it's Hinduism or the Vedic tradition, it's Rama, an incarnation of God on earth as righteousness. As just pure love and right action and dharma. So if the sun is exalted, Rama, if it's in its own sign, you can also worship Surya, the sun, as the divine, through a number of Surya mantras and rituals. If it's friendly, you can go to Agni and do fire rituals, fire offerings, or work with fire. Again, this isn't just in the Hindu context. This is in any spiritual tradition, working with fire. And let me put this down here. And then debilitated or enemy sign, any form or aspect of Shiva. Okay? So if we're dealing with the moon, in general, the moon indicates Krishna, the playful form of God incarnate on earth, the Chandravamsha, right? Chandravamshi and Surya Vamsha. Rama is Surya, Chandra is the moon. So the more playful, the kind that interacts with human beings on a playful level, so Krishna, but also the moon represents the divine feminine. So you pick. So if the moon is exalted, Krishna. If the moon is in its own sign, so this is going to help you pick. So in general, this first column. But if you want to be able to pick, more adroitly, the divine feminine, Durga, friendly sign, Saraswati, or any aspect of the divine feminine that rules sort of our artistic qualities and so on. And then debilitated, consider Parvati, Gauri, the wife of Shiva. Just as here it's Shiva, right? Here it's Shiva's wife, Shiva, Parvati, Gauri. All right, then Mars, we already talked about, Hanuman or Ganesha. These are the general. How do we narrow it down? Well, if Mars is exalted, Narasimha. If it's in its own sign, consider Agni, again, fire ceremony, or Surya. In a friendly Skanda, or a saint in your tradition who embodies these qualities of heroism, or Rudra. Okay, but anywhere here you can just default to Hanuman, or you can default to Ganesha. Remember, this column is sort of your default column. All right, with Mercury, again, the general default is Vishnu or Buddha. By the way, with Mars, Mars does rule Buddhists. In Parashara and in the Vedic writings, they do refer to Mars as ruling the people who go their own way, who wear the red robes, right? So Mars also, we can put Buddhism, because Mars is known as Vakra. Vakra means who goes retrograde, who follows his own course. And the Buddhists went away from the Vedic sort of, traditions of caste and, the priestly hierarchies and so on. So they went Vakra. And they have to be heroic to do that, because it took, guts to stand up to the politics of the time and say, no, I'm going to do it my way. So Mars also Buddhism, yeah, as well as Mercury. Exalted Buddha, own Ganesha. I'll let you just read through these. You can see them here. Friendly Vishnu. Then Jupiter. Jupiter is Guru. He is the divine. So he is connecting to your teacher, to your divine preceptor, and worshiping them, giving your life to them as a form of Ishta Devata, being devoted to the Guru. Okay? And here are some other classically classic associations with Jupiter. Okay? You can Indra, Brahma. So in the Christian or tradition, this would be like Brahma is the bearded creation god, right? And not much worshipped in the Hindu tradition, but in certain Christian sects like certain Christian sects like oh gosh, it's not coming to mind. It's on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, there must be a reason for it, so I'm not going to say. But that worship directly, they bypass Jesus in a sense. They worship God directly. Jehovah's Witness is what I'm thinking. Yehovah, right? They worship Yahweh or Yehovah, God directly. This is Jupiter. Okay, so Jupiter indicates this. A connection, or Jupiter can also be Vedanta. So let's put this here. From one level of pure devotion to your guru to Vedanta, which is absorption into the divine, the cosmic consciousness, for which a guru is necessary, but, well, there's no but, for which a guru is necessary, but, and you understand that the guru is your gateway to pure consciousness. Okay, so Vedanta is another path associated with the Jupiter and can go all through each one of these columns. Then Venus represents the divine feminine, the goddess. If it's the Christian tradition, it's an aspect of Mary, who perhaps was wed to, not Mother Mary, that's Moon. Okay, Mother Mary is Moon, the divine mother. Venus is the divine lover. So it can indicate Mary, whom many Christians in certain sects believe Jesus was married, and he had, or at the very least, he had a intimate relationship with her and gave her, she was one of his, or she was his top student, his lover. I know this is controversial, and I don't know the answers, but if that's your belief, then this would be an indication of Venus. So Lakshmi, Durga, Saraswati, and also Indra for some reason comes across here, or an aspect of the feminine that is the fierce feminine. So you could even say Kali. Okay. Then Saturn, again Hanuman, but also Krishna, because Krishna is sweet. So Hanuman, because he has power over Saturn and he is friends with Saturn, and Krishna because he balances Saturn's harshness with playfulness, and then Saturn himself you can worship. Okay, and you can read across here. Again, Saturn in Christian or other traditions can be just Jehovah Witness, because there's a sense of, with Saturn, there's a sense of deprivation. So I don't recognize these holidays. I don't recognize these foods or these customs. I sort of deprive myself from, willingly and gladly, from these customs and pronouncements. So Saturn can also represent that across the board. Okay, Rahu, Durga, the divine mother in her fierce aspect. Rahu exalted, which for this consideration we consider it in Taurus, would be the form of the divine boar, Varaha, in its own sign Shiva, again Durga, and then Chandi or Kali, debilitated or in an enemy sign. Okay, then Ketu, Ganesha, Matsya indicates water deities. So working with water, and when you come to remedial measures, you can also work with water animals, with fish, and so on. So the own sign here, the exaltation sign is considered Scorpio. You can work with Surya if Ketu is in Sagittarius, Naga, serpents, and Ganesha again. All right. So I kind of broke down this chart for you. I hope I didn't take too much time, but these are the 3 techniques you can use. And ideally, bring them together and have a conversation with your client or in your own life, and think about how these have played out in your life. And more than likely, you will see a strong hit with one of them. So in our example chart with Mars and Mercury, there's probably some connection to Ganesha. Also with Moon, probably some connection with Durga or the Divine Feminine, and so on and so on. And even the fact that Mars in this chart is in an enemy sign, we can even narrow this down. Do you guys see this? So Mars in the D1 chart is in an enemy sign. So we can narrow this down, go across to Mars, and look at Rudra. So this person having this chart could benefit as a suggestion from the Rudram, the Shri Rudram, or the Mahamrityunjaya mantra, or any kind of fierce sadhana. And for more on that, you can see my video about Ardra Nakshatra and some of the remedies associated with it. I think that's pretty much it for this video. I want to keep it rather brief, and I know it's taken some time. I'll add one final thing, checking my notes here, that there is yet, so once you find the Ishta Devata, then what do? Well, for each of the planets, they have 108 mantras, and there is a way to find that mantra and that specific sound. I'm going to cover that in another video coming up, so stay tuned for that. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, the YouTube channel, so that you'll be alerted when new videos come out. Okay? Thank you. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om.